Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today to kick off National Social Prescribing. Still muted, and you'd think after all this time I would be able to work a online Teams call. Bearing in mind that's how we've been working for a year, so apologies. I think that's the quote of 2021, isn't it? You're on mute. I always get told I'm on mute, so apologies. So welcome to National Social Prescribing Day. It's really good to be able to celebrate all the good work that everybody does across the globe now. It's International Social Prescribing Day. It used to be National Social Prescribing Day, so it's good that we get to celebrate that across the world. We're just admitting people still, so bear with us. We are expecting, like I say, over 100 people on today's session. So if you do drop out at all, or if you miss anything, as you can see, this is going to be recorded, or this is being recorded as we speak, so we can send you the link to the rest of the session if you do drop out, or if we drop out. So I'm just going to share my screen. Just a bit of housekeeping. If you can stay on mute, that'd be really, really helpful. And if you have a question, please use the chat facility. Kira will be monitoring the chat facility. Failing that, just pop your hand up on the call, and Kira will say to me that they've got a question, because I'll be on a presentation mode, so I won't be able to see your faces. So if you have any questions, please do put it in the chat or pop your hand up. What was it? I'm going to share my screen. I can't remember how to do that. Okay, so we're going to make a start, and then anyone that joins on can catch up. So, like I say, welcome to National Social Prescribing Day, and I'm really pleased that you've joined us this morning to find out what is social prescribing and kind of the work that we do at Social Enterprise Kent with our delivery partners across East Kent. So, just to introduce myself, my name's Jack Packman. I work for Social Enterprise Kent, and I'm the contracts manager and look after social prescribing and community navigation for SEK. My background is I started off as a community warden as I left university, and then kind of developed into social prescribing there. The wardens do it every day, and and within their role. And then I moved on to Red Zebra, working there, and I kind of really found out what social prescribing was then. And that was a few years ago when it was quite a lonely place. We didn't have social prescribing days. We didn't have, as many roles as we do now out in the field. So it's really good to see that social prescribing has developed into what it is, and it's much needed. And I think the pandemic has showed how much it has been needed by the statutory services, the NHS, and by the voluntary sector. So it's been really good to see that. Also joining me today will be Rebecca McGuinness and Keith Jones, both working for Age UK. They're part of our delivery partners, and they'll be presenting later on. So I'll let them introduce themselves a bit later on. So, what is social prescribing? So social prescribing is a way of linking people to sources of support within the community. And I think it's really important to say that, without the community, social prescribing can't happen. And it's a conversation that we have with social prescribers all the time about sometimes and often the lack of services that we have sometimes to refer people into. So the community is a massive part of social prescribing, because without the social prescribers and without the social prescribing services, the social prescribing work can't happen. And like I say, it provides health and social care professionals with a non-medical and non-service focused options. So outside the care system. So where people go into social care unnecessarily or into healthcare unnecessarily, or even into the criminal justice system. We can try use social prescribing to avoid that. And there's a few case studies that we'll share later on and on Twitter or social media platforms that kind of highlight kind of the work that we've done around that. And a prime one is, I remember when I was dealing with a young 18-year-old a few years ago. He was very heavily involved in crime, and just the use of social prescribing by socially prescribing him into a boxing club kind of released his anger, that he had in him. And now he still goes to that boxing club, 6 years on, and hasn't been involved in crime since then. So just that simple referral into a community service has alleviated the pressure of statutory services such as the police and the criminal justice system, and it's also given him a way of life and improved his health and well-being, just from a simple social prescription. And that's just one key highlight that I've done in my career, and quite proud, and I share that quite often. And funny enough, we still talk. So it also kind of forms that relationship between you and the client sometimes, especially when you've had such a success story such as that. But it's really important that social prescribing can also operate alongside treatments and care packages to improve people's health and well-being. So it's not just we go in and socially prescribe them anymore just to an art class or to a boxing session. Social prescribing has developed into much more than that, and I think it will continue to develop over the years into something really more fantastic. But I think it's really important to highlight that we don't just go and visit the client now and just kind of put them into an art class, put them into a debt management company. We work with them for a period of time to kind of really, push them into services at the right time. And I think it's important that we do put them in at the right time, because, there's no point in putting them into a session that needs paying for if they're in debt and they can't afford it, because then you kind of going back to square one. So it's kind of working, in priorities really, and then kind of promoting independence at the end of it. And I think it's really important that it's client-led and client-focused, because gone are the days now where people turn up and tell you must do this, you must do that. It's about that holistic approach, about what the client wants and what the client needs, because they know better than anyone most of the time what kind of is right for them and not right for them. And there are occasions that we have to take the lead, in the first couple of weeks to kind of guide them into the right pathway. But predominantly, we like the client to make the decision and kind of make the care plan with us. Working alongside, if they're a carer, we work alongside their carer. If they're, with their parents, or if they're with their partners, we try and include them in as long as they want that. So it's kind of a holistic way of working with people and improving their health and well-being. So that's great. So social prescribing is that in a nutshell. And there is now like a bit of a hierarchy tier of social prescribing, and I think all social prescribers do this now, whether you're labelled as a link worker, or a community navigator, or even a receptionist in a GP surgery. I think there's now a hierarchy of kind of level of support. And a couple of years ago, we used to have care navigation. So care navigator is the link between different parts of the system, being the first point of contact for individuals, carers, health and social care professionals, and guiding people through and coordinating the individual's journey. So what kind of happened a couple of years ago is they looked at the care navigation role and they looked at social prescribing, and what they did is they kind of combined them for a third tier level of support. So the first tier is you've got your signposting, which everyone on the call probably does, and everyone on a day-to-day basis signposts, whether that's, do you know the local Age UK number? Do you know where I can, sort my benefits out? You kind of just say, I'll go to the DWP, go to Age UK. Then you've got the social prescribing intervention, which is that, intervention of linking people in to services to make sure that they improve their health and well-being, as discussed. And then we have community navigation, which I think everybody kind of gets involved with now at all different levels. I don't think, despite what you're called, I think that people kind of do different levels of social prescribing. And community navigation is an enhanced social prescribing service which combines both care navigation and social prescribing. A community navigator normally deals with complex cases which need a longer term intervention. And I think that people now do this, like I say, at different levels. So whether you're a link worker or a social prescriber, you do community navigation. And this was combined by Kent County Council when it was commissioned 2 years ago. And this is the service that we'll be talking to you about when I hand over to Keith and Rebecca about kind of the stuff they get involved with. And as you can see below, they get involved with kind of the real nitty-gritty, real complex need kind of intervention, such as housing, which takes a while to navigate through. As you know, if you put a housing application in, it can take a while to kind of get an outcome, and then there could be complications along the way. We deal with potential evictions, so people that are about to be homeless, that kind of needs that real complex intervention to try and liaise with the landlord, try and liaise with the local authority, to try and kind of negotiate away with that person staying in the property, as well as if they are evicted, then trying to get them into housing. So it can be quite complex. And then we've got things like debts, social isolation, low-level mental health, and what we see around mental health is hoarding. We see a lot of hoarding come our way because it's becoming more common now. I think the more people are identified, and the fact that we go into their homes now, we can now see that whole sort of picture around what the issue is. And just touching on that, it's really important that we go into people's homes, because a few years ago I sat in an MDT and a GP kept bringing a patient to the MDT saying that their COPD was triggering. And they kept prescribing medication for it, but they weren't sure what was triggering it. So me and the GP did a visit at somebody's home, and it was actually the damp in their home that was causing the COPD to trigger. So what we did, we made a referral. Onwards to the local housing association, which then got the problem solved, and the COPD kind of fled down, so he wasn't making regular visits to the GP. And apologies, MDT, I shouldn't use acronyms in things like this. It's a multidisciplinary team meeting where we bring a lot of professionals around a table, and you have GPs, you have health professionals, district nurses, and social prescribers, and many more around a table. So apologies, I shouldn't use acronyms. So that's enough of me. I'm now going to hand over to Keith and Rebecca to take you through the operational side of Connect Well East Kent.
Hi everyone, my name's Rebecca, and my colleague Keith is going to speak a bit later on, and we are senior community navigators for Connect Well East Kent. We line manage teams covering Ashford, Canterbury, Dover, Faversham, Folkestone and Hythe and Thanet, delivering community navigation on behalf of Kent County Council and the NHS. And this session is really going to focus on operationally, so who can we support, what can we help with, how you can make a referral, and how you can find out about the service where you are if you're not in East Kent. I'm going to sound like Chris Whitty here now. Jack, next slide please. Okay, so our service is predominantly set up to support people over the age of 55, but we will also support people under 55, so adults with a learning difficulty or disability and a complex issue. A complex issue is really around people trying to deal with lots going on at once. So it may be that someone has a housing issue, they're also in debt, and they're feeling very lonely. And we have seen a really big increase in these referrals for under 55s with complex issues since the start of the pandemic. I think there's lots of services that just haven't been able to provide that face-to-face support because it's not been safe to do so. Lots of services have moved that online, which is great for the people that can access it, but for those that haven't been able to, we've seen a lot of people approaching us not really knowing where to turn or where to go for that support. So as I say, we've seen an increase in those referrals since the pandemic. When we start working with people, most initial visits will take place in the person's home, but we're equally happy to invite them into one of our offices or meet in a neutral place if that's what they'd prefer. And home visits have continued to varying degrees throughout COVID for our teams, with robust risk assessments and PPE in place. So we are still visiting people that require that one-to-one intervention. Our approach to supporting people is completely person-centred. So we make sure that the person that we're supporting is at the heart of everything we do. So asking them what matters to them and what do they want to get out of working with our service. Jack's already touched on the fact that what we do is holistic. So making sure that we don't just look at that one issue that's been referred to us, but is there anything else going on for that person that may be impacting that? And just really ensuring that they've got that wraparound support in place and they're able to access the right support at the right time. As a service, we are really keen to do partnership working. We couldn't possibly solve every issue for every person that comes in without working with our partners. So whether that be carrying out joint visits to someone perhaps that we've got a relationship with that another service needs to support, or vice versa, or a true partnership working, so where different providers are taking ownership for different aspects of that case. And in those circumstances, our teams will often act as the key contact for the person they're supporting, so they don't become overwhelmed with lots of different people getting in touch about lots of different things. And we found that's been really beneficial to prevent people to becoming overwhelmed. We've had some really great successes recently, even during the pandemic, of working closely with housing associations, local police teams, social services, and our NHS colleagues. We can support people for up to 12 weeks. We usually find that people are in and out of our service in about 4 to 6 weeks. Occasionally, someone might need the full 12 weeks, and very occasionally, someone might need more support than that. We wouldn't be dropping someone at the end of the 12 weeks. You know, if we hadn't finished the work with them, we would continue that. But as I say, the majority of the people are supported within that 4 to 6 week time frame. And people can use the service as many times as they need. Quite often we find that we start off with a referral for something that's quite low level, so perhaps a blue badge. We go in and support with that. And then maybe a month or two down the line, that person refers themselves back into the service for maybe a more complex issue that they weren't quite ready to deal with at that stage. Having the 12 weeks means that we have the opportunity to build really good, trusting relationships with our clients, which then really supports the work we're trying to do. And we quite often get people comment that it's been nice to talk to someone who isn't just focused on what's your problem, what's your issue, that we actually can get to know them as a person as well as the issues that they're trying to deal with. Next slide, please. So we're going to look a bit about what help we can provide, and I know Jack has briefly touched on some of these issues. I'll just talk a bit more around them to give you a bit more of an idea of what that support looks like. So we can provide anything from a bit of information, advice and signposting to a range of emotional and practical support. We're not just pointing people in the right direction, but also doing things alongside our clients. With that, it's really important that we promote independence in what we're doing. So where people can do things for themselves, they're encouraged to do so. And where they might need a little bit of extra support or reassurance, that we're able to provide that too. And quite often we start off doing that extra support and providing that reassurance, but as their confidence builds, they start to take more control over their circumstances, which is where we want to be when we finish with someone, really, that with them having the confidence to know where to go if they find themselves in a situation where they need some support again. So benefits and managing money. This is around, so this might include things like doing a benefit check for somebody to make sure they're getting everything they're entitled to, and then making any applications where we find that there is a benefit that they could claim that they're not already claiming. Linking people in with specialist debt services. So my team are by no means experts on debt, but there's some really amazing services out there that are, and quite often people just don't know that they're there or how to link in with them. So supporting people to get linked into those services. Liaising with utility companies, so it might be around fuel poverty, it might be around moving people onto low income tariffs, or it might be around a debt on their energy bill. Quite often we find that people will receive these letters around debts and non-payment and just bury their head in the sand, when actually the best thing you can do is reach out to the company and you know, let them know that you're struggling. So we do quite a lot of that with the people we work with. We work really closely with our food banks, so organising food parcels for people that have found themselves in crisis situations, and also applying for charity grants. So we've had some really good successes recently where we've worked with our local councils and the CAB to support people who found themselves in real hardship. So I'm going to move on to housing now. So this is anything and everything to do with housing, really. So we will support people who own their own homes, right through to people who are homeless, as Jack mentioned before. So supporting people to look at their housing options. So it may be that they're looking to downsize. It may be that they're looking to move to somewhere more appropriate for their needs. Perhaps they're looking for sheltered housing or extra care housing where they can live independently, but there's more support on site than they would get from sheltered housing. We've also supported people look for alternative private rented accommodation where perhaps the landlord has asked for the property back because they're moving in themselves or they're selling it or for whatever reason. And we also work for people who are caring for a partner or family member who now need to look at perhaps moving into residential care. So supporting them with how they go about that, and just providing that support as they go through that process, because that can be quite hard for people to go through. Homelessness, so Jack touched on this earlier, around making sure that people are linked in with the council if they're at risk of homeless. We also work closely with services like Porchlight, who are able to provide specialist support around that. We do lots of applications for people looking to move into social housing, so applying through Kent Home Choice. And we also liaise with landlords around repairs and rent arrears. And this might be a social landlord, so the council or a housing association, but it also might be a private landlord. We had a case just before Christmas in Folkestone, an elderly lady who we visited for something unrelated to the heating, but actually when we got to her property, she didn't have any heaters. And on speaking to her, she'd lived in that house for 7 years without any appropriate heating. And my navigator said it was actually colder inside than it was outside. We spoke to her about, you know, have you approached your landlord about this? And she said that her landlord just wasn't interested. And I can tell you that within a week of us contacting the landlord, he'd organised the works for the heating to go ahead. So by Christmas, she was warm, and she was, you know, very grateful to now have heat. And she's actually said, following on from our intervention, that she's got a much better relationship with that landlord now. So that's just one example of how just that brief intervention can make a massive difference to somebody. Keeping safe and independent at home. So lots of people now, particularly older people, want to remain at home. They don't want to move into a care home if they can avoid it. So we really play a big role in making sure that people can do that safely. So whether it be linking in with Kent Fire and Rescue Service around their safe and well visits, or assessing people for minor aids and adaptations. So lots of our team members are trained as community equipment assessors, and they can go out and assess people for things like grab rails, perching stools, toilet frames, chair raisers, just to make being at home easier and safer. Alongside that, we often get requests to support people to set up a Telecare package. So having an emergency call button that they can use if they have a fall, for example, or become unwell, and also supporting people to get things like key safes installed, so emergency services or family members can access the property in case of an emergency. We get lots of requests from people for help with domestic support. So this might be setting up a gardening service, Meals on Wheels, a bit of help with cleaning, or a shopping service. And often these requests run in tandem really with benefit support. So if the person is an older person and they're looking for help with cleaning and shopping and things, we're always, you know, looking at, oh, might they be entitled to attendance allowance, which would then enable them to get the support they need to manage those tasks. And as Shaq mentioned earlier, we have seen an increase in referrals for people who have got hoarding issues or issues with clutter in their homes. And we've been able to support those with arranging declutters and deep cleans, often through looking at charity grants and other funding that may be available. Reducing loneliness and isolation. So during the pandemic, this has obviously been limited in terms of what we could support with, and we've had to do things differently, like everyone has. So we've been setting people up with telephone befriending through our partners at Age UK, which has been a real lifeline to some people who have suddenly found themselves unable to get out and about, and also cut off from friends or family who would usually visit. We've worked with Kent County Council to link some of their clients in with their Cara tablet pilot scheme. So these were really simple, easy to use tablets where at the touch of the button, the person can call their service provider or a friend or family member and speak and be able to see them on the screen. And of course, we've also been linking people in with online support. So as I mentioned earlier, lots of services have been providing and moving their support online. So making sure that people who want to access support in that way are able to do so. So before COVID and hopefully after COVID, a really large part of what we do is physically introducing people into groups, clubs and activities. So it may be supporting someone to return to a hobby they used to enjoy or to try something new. And before COVID, we had a really lovely example of a lady in Deal whose husband had died. She didn't have any family or friends living locally, and she was very isolated, and the only real contact she was getting is when she was going to the supermarket. So, you know, when you're behind someone in the queue and they're taking a long time, you know, this case really just made me feel, gosh, you know, no one really knows what's going on for that person. And at first she was reluctant to entertain any idea of perhaps coming into the Age UK centre, because her confidence had been knocked, and you know she wasn't in a very good place. But with time and being able to build a relationship with the community navigator, she agreed that she would come into the Deal Centre for an afternoon tea event they were holding there. And within moments of walking in, she recognised an old colleague, which was amazing, and they got chatting, and the community navigator didn't see her for dust that day, which was lovely really, because you know, for someone who was so reluctant, and that lady's life was transformed after that. She was getting picked up to go to the garden centre, they were going out for coffees and for lunch. It's had a massive impact on her well-being, and I think it just goes to show that sometimes the really simple things make the biggest impact. Access to GP and health services. So approximately 1 in 5 GP appointments are taken up with non-medical issues. So it's no surprise really that the NHS is one of our biggest referrers. We've got really good relationships with our GP surgeries and indeed our social prescribing link workers, who you're going to hear from later today if you're booked onto that session. And if you're not, it's not too late. We work as part of a multidisciplinary team, working with health and social care professionals to discuss patients who've got really complex needs. And at those meetings, it's an opportunity not only for us to pick up referrals, but also for us to feed referrals into those teams to be discussed where we've got real concerns about people. Care service options. So aside from the NHS, social services is our biggest referrer. So quite often people approach social services if they've got an issue, things have become overwhelming and they don't know where to go to get help. So they do get a lot of referrals that don't really fall under their remit, but they can see the person is in need of help and support. And at that point, they will be either signposted or referred directly on to us. That doesn't mean to say that we can't refer people into social services. So if we get working with somebody and it's clear that they have some care needs, we can make those referrals into social services for a needs assessment to take place. We also get referrals for people who are going to be self-funding care packages. So they're over the financial threshold, they will need to pay for their own care, and they just need some support to know how to go about arranging that. And finally, I've put a little bullet point on here around form filling. So I've already mentioned lots of the forms that we fill in. Other things that I might not have mentioned are things like blue badges, grant applications. Generally, if it's a form and it needs filling in, we can support with that. So can we go to the next slide, please? Making a referral. So anyone can make a referral into our service. And if you're listening to this and you feel like you or someone you know could really benefit from our support, then please give us a ring or email us. If you're a professional listening to this, we have got a professionals referral form, which we will circulate to everyone after today, and you can just return that to us by email. As a team, we're really proactive, and I'm really proud to be part of such a proactive team. So if you're looking to make a referral and you're not sure if it's us, please do get in touch. We'd be very happy to help, either by pointing you in the right direction of who may be the most appropriate service to support, or indeed supporting ourselves. Next slide, please. And if you're listening to this session and you think it's really useful, but you're not in East Kent, don't panic. You can find information about the Community Navigation Service in your local area by visiting kent.gov.uk. Thank you.
Am I still on? Apologies about that. I'm not very good with technology, as we established at the beginning, and I muted myself and then couldn't unmute myself, so apologies. Oh, didn't want to do that. So as Rebecca has really detailedly kind of explained, the service does cover quite a lot of reasons for referrals, and I think I've been answering some of your questions in the chat, so apologies if I haven't been looking at the camera. As I said in the chat, we've dealt with over 34,000 referrals in year 2. I think COVID has had a lot to deal with that, because in year 1 we only dealt with just under 5,000. So our capacity really is quite big. Where we work with people in their own sort of diaries, so the navigators, they manage their own diaries really, and manage their own sort of caseloads and workloads. So they can fit people in when they feel they need to fit people in, etc. So and out of the 5,000 people that we kind of had in the first year, just under 4,000 of those receive face-to-face visits. So the teams are busy, and like Rebecca said, the average sort of intervention is anything up to 7 weeks, but we do offer that 12-week support. And we will circulate, as Rebecca said, the details of how to refer in. But moving on from that, we have a telephone hub team that work and coordinate and are kind of the heart of the service. There's only 3 of them, and they really do work hard to process all the referrals and make sure that people get put onto the right referral pathway. So they're available 5 days a week, and they work from 8:30 till 6 to try and be as accessible as we can. The reason I'd like to go 24 hours, but they're not too keen on that, and only because we're not a crisis service. KCC still has their crisis service available, which can then filter down to us if need be. But they are specialists in what they do. They know what services are available within the community. They're constantly researching, constantly talking to services on the front line, and they're not just there for the clients, they're there for professionals too. So if you've got a client sat in front of you, and you're not sure where to refer this person or what to do or where to go, you can always give our team a call on the hub number, and they'll be able to signpost you to the right service at the right time as well. Because we operate a no wrong door approach. So if somebody comes through to our service and it's not necessarily what we would deal with, or they don't meet the criteria, then what we do, we don't just say sorry, it's not us. We accept the referral, and then we refer that person onto the right referral pathway, and then let you know where that person's gone to. So in future, you know, if you then refer that person in again, you kind of know actually that's not Connect Well, it might be Live Well Kent. And like someone asked in the chat, we work very closely with most of the services across Kent, to be honest. We're always talking to Involve, we're talking to Imago, who offer the community navigation service in the other areas. We have really good relationships with the link workers, social link workers for the NHS, and we also have really good relationships with the PCNs, primary care networks, as well, which is operated on a locality basis. So, you know, we are kind of that single point of access, central contact for clients, which we can refer into. So just some exciting news, really. So we have some new social prescribing coordinators starting in Dover and Thanet, as I alluded in the chat. This is forever growing. Social Enterprise Kent are forever growing in the social prescribing arena, and we also have some funding to deliver some services as well. So we're kind of doing the two aspects of social prescribing, of delivering the service, which we've just been successful in the Thriving Communities bid, and we are also doing that social prescribing as well. And I think additionally, we've just been awarded the wellbeing contract for Thanet and Swale, which you'll hear from Claire Shelton later on if you're on that session, which is at 4 o'clock. And that's all about, you know, what services are going to be out there for you to refer into. I mean, and by services, I mean activities, because as I mentioned earlier in the session, you know, there's no point having the social prescribers if there's nothing to socially prescribe into. So the wellbeing contract's, you know, going live on the 1st of April, and Claire's going to be talking a little bit about that later on. So you can contact me if you have any questions about this session. We will be sending this session out, and I will be opening the floor in a minute to questions in a second. But you can contact me on those contact details there, and you can follow Social Enterprise Kent on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and we can answer your questions. There. But I'm just about to open the floor to anybody that has any questions. Let me just come out of this. How do I stop sharing my screen? Stop sharing. Has anybody got any questions for us at all? I think we're just on time. Yeah, so that's good. Has anybody got any questions that they want to ask on the call? No, we must have. Rebecca must have done a fantastic job.
Just a quick question, Jack.
Yeah.
Hi. I work for DWP, and I'm the disability just about to take on the role of disability employment advisor. And I was just wondering, just wanted to clarify something. Can people self-refer, and can work coaches also refer their clients as well?
Yeah, both of them. Yep.
People
can self-refer, and yeah, absolutely, work coaches can refer into it as well. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
No problem. No problem. Emily, did you have your hand up?
I did. Basically, I'm working for DWP as well. I actually work with Peter. Are there going to be notes for these training sessions? Because I'm wanting to put together some information for my fellow work coaches.
Yeah, so what we can do for you is we can put all this information together and send it out. It'll probably be Monday. I'm on leave tomorrow for the you know, well-deserved leave, I think. But yeah, I will. I'll put all this together and send it out to everybody on this call on Monday, and it will be everything we kind of discussed today. And I'll send a copy of the presentation with it as well.
Thank you.
All that information, and this is recorded too, so it'll be uploaded to YouTube, and we'll share that link too.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Sorry, Kira. Who's next? Margaret.
Hello, Jack.
Hiya.
I was just wondering what the services are out there for the under 55, so the younger people with problems, sort of 25 and upwards, really. We see a lot of that in my role, but we're never quite sure who to refer them to.
Yeah, and that's a really valid point. And there's some of the colleagues that work in the NHS on the call today that do specialise in any age group. And I think Nicola Cluffy is frantically typing in the chat.
Can I just say we go from 18 plus, but
Okay.
Generic email in there. Hello, I'm Nicola Clockley. I'm the social prescribing worker for Canterbury South and North PCN. I also have a colleague, Debbie, who should be on here somewhere.
Okay.
But if we put our email in there, but we do from 18 plus. I know some of the other link workers are lower, but in the Canterbury area at the moment, it's 18 plus.
So we're in Tunbridge Wells. So is that involved in our area?
I don't know. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So they've said only 55 and over.
Okay, so the criteria for the navigation service is 55 plus,
Right.
but we also do take on 18 plus, but they have to have a complex issue such as a learning difficulty or a disability. But what I will do, again, as part of the details I'll send out on Monday, is I will also include all the NHS social prescribing link workers that work across Kent.
Thank you.
So that way you have, for me, it's all about the client. It's all about making sure that client gets help. So we're not precious about who it goes to, as long as that client does get help. So I'll include all the social prescribing link workers in that as well. So that way, if it's someone that's just 18 plus with no complex issues, as in they just need support, the social prescribing link workers are probably best placed to tackle that.
Lovely. Thank you.
Danielle?
Hello, sorry, it took me a while to get off mute. I was wondering about so your inclusion criteria as well. I work for the local crisis team, and we have a lot of people that come through to us that are not known to secondary services. They don't necessarily have a diagnosis. We do a period of work with them, and then they're discharged from secondary services back into primary care. At that point, if that person has attempted to harm themselves at any time during our intervention, the IAP services wouldn't necessarily pick them up for 4 to 6 weeks. But these are people that would really benefit from your service potentially for that short period of time. I was just wondering if there's any sort of inclusion criteria. Obviously, if you had concerns, you could refer them straight back into us if that was the case.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about that. Yeah,
so again, as long as there's no immediate risk to the community navigator or to the client, there is a risk assessment box on there, so we would ask you to fill that out and just let us know of any risks, because it may be a double visit, it may be a joint visit that may need to happen, but no, we don't exclude as long as there's no immediate risk.
Perfect. So that'd be really good if we could do like joint visits and things like that, just to make sure everyone's comfortable. Oh, great, that's great, thank you.
No problem. Claire Budd.
Hi, I'm just asking you if you can provide us with some sort of list of contact details, a kind of hit list who we should go to first, some sort of who are the gatekeepers and everything.
Absolutely, that will come to you on Monday if that's okay, Claire.
Fantastic, thank you.
No problem. Jamie.
Hi, thanks, Jack. Hi, everyone. My question, I think someone's already put it in the group chat as well, is around as an organisation. So I work in the VCSE as Great Leaps as an alternative provision, and one of the things that we have when we see referrals come to us from organisations that are looking at social prescribing linking is the funding. So the funding, how does that person get paid for? How does that person get the money to then come to the service, or does the money go to the service? Because invariably what we find is the money doesn't make its way down to the organisation and the person can't actually pay for the full service that would potentially be used in the social prescribing treatment of an alternative aspect. So if the money goes to SEK to help get them linked in or involved, help get them linked into a social prescribing access, generally from a GP or from a self-referral, when they get to the point of the service, where's the money? Because it generally doesn't find its way down. That would be my experience.
Yeah, so the funding is there to fund obviously the service. What we tend, and I totally agree with you, Jamie, sometimes people can't access services because they can't afford it, or the service can't afford to give it for free. So what we try and do is we try and source other funding opportunities. So for example, Orbit Housing have a Better Days fund that we access quite regularly. So if they're an Orbit customer or live in an Orbit community, that we can access funding through there and kind of help them pay for that, and access the service. I know Involved do a community fund in West Kent, and certainly in East Kent with a new wellbeing service, there'll be a community fund there that social prescribers can access, and community organisations can access to provide free services, so subsidised or for free. So you're absolutely right. You know, that does need to be invested in more, I think, and it's certainly happening, but it's happening very slowly.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right.
Thank you, Jack. And Rebecca, thank you for the presentation, because I also do work for MVA. So in terms of the social prescribing, also the Simply Connect platform, where we're looking to put lots of activities, as you call them, up. And a lot of the feedback that we could share with you comes in the relation to people not having the money once the link has gone in as an organisation to deliver what they would consider to be an amazing service in support of GPs and social prescribing in general. So thank you for today. It's been brilliant.
Thanks, Jamie. Sam Mitchell.
Hi there. Yeah, just a little bit of confusion from my end. So I work in Swale. So is Amargo the same service as you, but in my area?
Yes, absolutely. But there is again, to make it even more confusing, we cover Faversham, and sort of the first beginning of Tenham. But what we would do is, again, if that referral came into us, we wouldn't say, oh, we're not going to accept it. We would then refer it over to Amargo, and we would sort that out between us. So that way you aren't, being battered left, right, and centre of no, it's not us, no, it's them, no, it's not us, it's them. So we would accept that referral and then just refer it into Amargo and then let you know it's now with Amargo.
Okay, brilliant. Cheers.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. I will get all this information out to you on Monday, and if you have any questions, my contact details will be on that information. And yeah, I hopefully will see some of you throughout the day in different sessions. Thank you ever so much for joining.